All right, you guys want to get started?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Sticking around for so long. I'm Jim Birch from Zeno Media in Chicago. I want to talk to you today about theming and site building for the administrators, the content creators of the site. I'm kind of in my second life being a Drupal developer. I was a webmaster for an e-commerce company for more than 15 years. So I came from the content side of the fence. My business went under during the housing bubble burst, and I became, what came natural after that, a Drupal developer. But what I came into was so many sites that were built without thinking of the webmaster at all. Really bad UIs, just so much information. A webmaster whose job is to post blogs, and they have complete control of, or complete access to the whole Drupal administration interface. So I started researching this, and over the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of learned a bunch of tricks, put it all together in this probably too large presentation. So I'm going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to go through how to clean up, the content creation screens, how to discover who your content creators are, who your administrators are, a little bit about my favorite modules that go in there to help all sorts of things, and then a little bit about leaving documentation for your administrators after you develop the site. Why do we do all this? Because I've heard too many times that there are people that don't like Drupal after they get the site. WordPress is so much easier to use than Drupal because it's really good out of the box. There isn't much customization in the WordPress interface, but we have that ability, to make it look great or make it look terrible. So the admin menu is the first thing I saw. It is great if you know what you're doing. There, a module will add links to itself in the admin menu. There's so many options in there. If you know where to look, it's the fastest thing, about the site. I struggled between Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 sites. Things are completely different places there. The next place is the index of the administration. If you just go to /admin in the upper right, you see you have your tasked window, which you could put blocks there, but you also have index, which is basically just an itemized list of the things that are in the admin menu. And it is a really, really long page. And this is just for my dinky little blog. It has 15 pages of scroll in there. Same thing with the CK editor. A lot of my developers install the CK editor module or install the WYSIWYG module and just dump it in and go. It gives you every button in the world. I hope, we're putting some flash and emojis and different language characters in there. When really you can strip that down, it helps you hit what your designers are enforcing if you limit the HTML that a user can put in there, and keeps it simple for everybody. So, who are our content creators? The first thing that I do when we're building a site or working with a new client is we find out who the website's for, right? We want to know who ultimately we're working for. Are we selling a product? Are we making a magazine or a blog and we have different types of users? We should always also take these roles, or this role discovery, and apply it to our administrators. So the developer, we always keep the administrator role. But chances are there's going to be somebody who you deliver this website to that doesn't need everything, but needs a lot of technical things, more than just a blogger or author. So we make a webmaster role. The next is an editor. An editor usually has control of their own content, but control of other people's content also. So they can change any node on the site versus an author who may just have control of their nodes on the site. These are pretty common roles that I run into a lot. We can also create content-specific roles. So if I have an author that I don't want to allow to access pages, but I do want them to be able to access the blog node, I can create a role just for that. Somebody who just releases press releases? Press releasers, I like to call them. Event creators. Anybody else have anything off the top of their head? No? You'll run into, as you do content discovery, you'll run into people that in a company or a nonprofit or some kind of organization, the bigger they get, the more controlled you should be able to have their role in the website. We can also create task-specific roles. A community manager is somebody that can assign roles to other users. How do we do this? A webmaster would maybe have this capability already. They can say who's an author, who's an editor. I may want an editor to have a community manager role. Jenny over here is really good at managing people, but Tom, not so much. So I can make both of them editors, and then I can give Jenny the additional role of community manager. I learned all this with this fantastic book, Planning and Managing Drupal Projects. Doesn't really go into the administration side of things, but really maps out how to look at the overall scope of a Drupal project from a non-technical way. Here's the content we're going to make, here's the design, here's how we're going to put it all together. Role discovery is a big part of it, and it's a really good book. You guys should check it out. Okay, so once we know who the content creators are, we can start fighting for them. Everybody here comfortable with installing and uninstalling modules on Drupal site? Yeah. Okay. Everybody here comfortable with drush on the command line? No. Everybody here have heard of drush? Okay. It's awesome, and if you told me I was going to be using a command line terminal on a computer 3 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. I am not that guy. But it is pretty nice. So once you're in your terminal, in your folder, like you would be on a computer, you can use drush to install a module like that. So this little command, drush download, the -y is for yes, and then the module name. And you can go and get the module name from the URL of the module on Drupal.org. Once I've downloaded, I can enable it. Same thing, drush en, yes, and then the module name. To disable it, it's dis, and to uninstall it, it's a little bit longer, pm-uninstall. So with this technique, I can install and uninstall modules, really fast. It really helps your productivity, and you can experiment with things. Try it out. If you don't like it, uninstall it and delete it out of there. If you don't want to use drush, you can, of course, do all this in the UI. You turn off, which is the disable of the module. Uninstall. Some modules have database bits that they put into the database. Uninstall will remove them, and then once that's done, you can delete the module, in your Finder or in your IDE. So same goes with themes. If you wanted to install a theme, it would be drush download and then the theme name. So in Drupal, we can have a different admin theme. Drupal 7, this is part of core. Drupal 6, there was a module you needed to add it on, but I hope nobody's starting new Drupal 6 sites now. I personally really like 7. There's a ton of themes out there that you can use. But here, the screen's getting a little truncated. On your theme screen, you have your default theme, and then you have your other themes that are installed. I use Bootstrap and then put my own theme on top of it as a child theme. And then you have your admin theme, which is set over here. You can use your own, a separate admin theme. You can use your front-end theme as your admin theme. You don't need to have an admin theme. You can develop your own admin theme, or you could use a separate theme altogether. When you have other themes enabled, the block system works for that theme also. So if you see the first tab right here, the Jim Birch tab, that is my front-end theme. 7, which is my admin theme, also gets a block system. So I can apply the main page content. That's going to be my administration content. And I can add the system help, which would be help messages right above it. You could also add any block you wanted. And in those blocks, you could say, I only want to show this block on the node create screen. So you could send messages to your administrator. You could pull in, here's the last 5 posts that were made on the site, or here are posts that are unpublished that maybe you should go look and publish. You can basically take your admin site and create content for the administrator. There's certain things I do when we start out a site or take over a site. That's to enable the admin toolbar rather than the default toolbar. I disable the overlay, which is the things that pop up all the time at you. I prefer to load the page. It goes a little slower. And then I disable shortcut, which is another toolbar underneath the admin toolbar. You start to get a little cramped up there. And if you use Drush, you can keep these commands in a notepad or a handbook that you have when you start a new site. Copy and paste, bang, I put these 3 commands in. I just enabled 2 modules and disabled 3 modules, in a second. Okay, content types and taxonomy defaults. When you're creating content types or taxonomies, you can make your title, every content type and taxonomy has a title and a body field. Your title and your body field don't need to be called title and body. You can say, if your content type is an event, you can call the title the event name. You can call it the event description. It doesn't need to be just title and body. A little bit more description helps users focus in on what needs to be done. Learn the technology of, or the terminology that they think rather than the way Drupal thinks. Almost every field has explanation or submission guidelines, basically just help. This content type is for events. Once you create this event, the editor is going to have to approve it to take it live. Or, once you create this event, it's going to appear on this page. Be sure to check it, after you hit publish, just to make sure everything went okay. You can say whatever you need to say to the administrator. The administrative description, this is behind the scenes. This is everywhere the content type or taxonomy is displayed in the admin UI. Basically, these are assets of the website, and we want to market these to our customers in a variety of different ways. You have your default publishing state and revisions. The default publishing state is whether if published on save or not. Revisions are fantastic, and they're not often turned on by default. But every time you click save, you can create a new copy of the node. This is kind of core in WordPress and other CMSs, but it's left to you to decide. Developers don't like it because it creates a node in the database every single time. Every once in a while, maybe you should clean it out or delete it. But it's great if you ever screw up somebody else's content. Author information, whether a page or a node goes to the menu, if you have the sitemap module, whether it's going to go in the sitemap and what frequency it's updated and what priority it is. A lot of other modules can hook into your content types and taxonomies. And on the admin screen for the content type, for these defaults, you can set everything up for the administrator. You can give them access to it or you cannot. So you can set these defaults and that's the way they are. Or they can change them in the screen. Another great helpful tool is Palantir.net's build spec spreadsheet. There's a blog where they talk about planning. The blog is called Developing Drupal Sites, Plan or Perish. Thinking about all this stuff and documenting it down before you start building in Drupal is really helpful. You can change fields and words and names in a spreadsheet a lot easier than you can in Drupal. It has tabs for nodes, fields, view modes, flags, node queues, image styles, panel panes, the list goes on. And you can define all this stuff from the beginning. So if you're thinking about your site architecture, you can map it all out and then give it to a junior developer to build it out the way you want it. You can make a lot of changes, learn from this spreadsheet to the next spreadsheet to the next spreadsheet. They link to it. It's a Google Doc. To save it, all you have to do is click File, save a copy, and then you have it in your Google Docs, or you can download it as Excel, or however you like to work. But this is a great tool just to see all the different things that Drupal is outside of the UI. So it's kind of like halfway in between in the browser, spreadsheet of what it is, to in the database, in the code, all the nerdy stuff that all these smart guys use. Good in between. So like content types and taxonomies, we have field defaults. So when you make a field on a node, you also have help text. This field is about this, or please put in 1,000 characters or less describing your business. For anything that has a WYSIWYG on it, you can define the text format. So I may allow image uploads in the body, but I have another WYSIWYG field down here where I'm not going to allow that. So I can create 2 different text formats and use them in different places. Module settings. Modules can hook into each of the fields also. So link it is kind of like an autocomplete for content of your site. Fences is a field wrapper or de-wrapper. If you've ever tried to theme a Drupal site and you have divs and divs and divs and divs inside of around your body field. Fences you can use to hook into your field and take it out, put a paragraph tag around it, put a span around it, or use no tag at all, or no wrapper at all. But any module that you install on a site has the potential to add itself to the field default screen. How many values do you want for this field? So if I have a body field, maybe I'm just going to have 1. But if I have an image field on this, I may allow unlimited. I may allow 10. Define that. If they are file fields or image fields, where are you going to upload them? This is very important to think about. It's one of the columns on the spreadsheet. If you don't think about them, it's fine. get all your files uploaded to site's default files. Great at the start of a site. When you have 10,000 files uploaded there, when a content creator clicks the button in the WYSIWYG to open that folder, it's going to take 4 minutes for that folder to open because it has 5,000 images in there. So I like to separate them into maybe the content type they're on, maybe the field in the content type, or if it's images, you can use date parameters. WordPress uses WP uploads and then year and month, and then it auto-generates the next time you upload another one. You can also do by role or by user. So these are all Jane's images, and these are all Tom's images. Possibilities are endless there. The title module turns the title field, or title, into a field. If you guys are themers or you run into trying to move the title out of the template and into the content where you can rearrange it, title module is great. They originally developed it for translations. Because title wasn't a field, nobody could translate it. So if you have a multilingual site, you need this module, but I install it every time, so I can, in the UI, I can move where the title goes, depending on the design. All right, these are some fun modules. There is, at the bottom of a website, at the bottom of a node, I looked down, the first one I ever worked on, and it said promote to front page. And make this sticky, and I clicked it, and then it didn't go on the front page. And I was so confused. Those are things that came with Drupal. The view that is default says, if we make it sticky in the archives, push it to the top. If it's promote to front page, it will show up on the front page before whatever, boring view that is. But nobody ever uses those. This is a really simple module that just hides those two things from the administrator from seeing them ever again. There's another more complicated module called override node options. This module gives a little bit more control, and you can hide them per role. So if you have something on a node that you only want the webmaster to see and not the author, or vice versa, you can use that module to set that. Simplify is the Swiss Army knife of what I'm talking about. It hides so many things. You can hide them globally, so I can set it once and forget about it, or you can do it on content type by content type basis. It also has settings for taxonomy, blocks, comments, user, and user profiles. So what Simplify does is, I have a screenshot of it here. Let me switch over. So on nodes, I could hide authoring information. So if you don't want the posted by Jim at 3:26 a.m., I can just hide it altogether. The text format selection. This is good. So if I define that I want the body field to use the safe for authors text format, I don't want them to have the ability to change that. So here's where I can say, I've set that. They have no choice in changing that selection. The publishing options. If it's published by default or published by not default, I can hide that from them. So an author can get publishing options hidden from them, and then the editor is the only one that can publish. If I'm not using revisions, you can hide that. Comments, menu settings. I know a blog post is never going to get added to a menu, so I can hide that. If I do need to add it to a menu, I can just use the menu interface. URL path settings, meta tag, XML sitemap. XML sitemap, I'm going to set it. It's a pretty rare instance that I need to, once I've defined that all blog posts are going to be in the sitemap, it's pretty rare that I'm going to make one that doesn't go in there so I can hide it. And then, you have less things for each of the other entity types, but users, I can hide the meta tags. Comments, I can add the text format selection, hide them, taxonomy, relations, text format, URL alias, meta tags. So simplify is kind of the cleaner upper of the node screen. The next one I'm going to talk about is the organizer, field group. Once you've created your fields, they kind of go on the content type screen, on the node screen, in a big blob. You have a big list. You can order them up and down. But field group, you can organize them. Field group gives you field sets, horizontal tabs, vertical tabs, accordions, divs on which you can add your own classes, and HTML elements. And then there's a lot of other modules that extend it. I use divs a lot for the Bootstrap grid system. So I can say, add a div and that's a row, and then add a div and this is my body, and add another div in that row and it's a sidebar over here. So this gives me the ability to rearrange content not only on the main website, but to the content administrators also. So good example of that is this. So I have a title field and a body field, and then I'm going to create a vertical tab for asset information. This asset is for a software company, then they make software as a service, and they make white papers, just like most software as a service companies. They're creating content, putting it out there, marketing it to their users so they can find people that take their stuff. So this asset has a lot of information on it. I have a vertical tab group with the data, asset information, and then vertical tabs for the featured area. This is the top of the asset. It has an image and a gallery image. I have some details, the next tab. What asset type is it? Is it a file, an embed? Who's the embed provider? There's an embed code, or there's a interactive demo. So basically, all of those things could be the asset. I group them all together. They use a marketing software called Marketo, which loads a form. I have a short description, and then I have segmentation, which is a lot of taxonomy terms and lists. So what's the audience? What business type is this made for? What company size is this made for? What industry? If I didn't have these different tabs, my create screen would be really long. But instead, I have a title field and a body field. And then I have one additional section here. Featured area has the 2 images. Asset details has all of those fields. The Marketo information, the short description, segmentation, which is a little bit long, and then related resources. So using field groups, I can organize the admin screen a little bit more to their liking. I can also use it on the front end. So this was, when you look at the create screen, that's the manage fields tab. When I look at the manage display tab, I can use field groups. And this is what I was talking about with my grid system. I have a container, a row, a left section, and a right section. Then I have a container and a row, or in bottom container, with a description and a sidebar. And at the bottom, the asset loads. So what does this look like? Pretty simple when you see it on the screen. Left column, right column, left column, right column, 2 rows. Yeah, a lot of information behind the scenes. Okay. Environment indicator. I was never used to this before I started working in web dev, but we're all developing in multiple environments now. So I do development on my local computer. I present it to my client on a staging server. Once it's approved, it moves to a production server, the live server. A few of my clients even have their own staging servers. So they want to be able to mess around, experiment away from the public's eye, do whatever they want. Environment indicator gives you a visual representation of where you are. Because, you know, I'm sure, like me, you guys work on 16 different things every day, and you can get kind of lost where you are. So the environment indicator is at the very, very top. It takes over the admin toolbar, or you can have it on the left side or the bottom. This is my live website. It's blue. And in the top right, it says production. So I can name the environments. You can have your Git branch that you're on in there. But more importantly, when I'm working local, I just see my red color. So I know if it's red, I can do whatever I want. You know, if it's blue, I need to be careful and make sure there. Yeah, you can make whatever color you want. It makes a pretty customizable and easy to use module. Dashboards. Dashboards is another thing I got ridiculously confused about in Drupal. You have one when you first log into the admin, that main screen. The dashboard module comes with core, and you can enable that and have another dashboard. If you're using Workbench, which is a workflow suite of tools, which I'm going to get to in a minute, it gives you a dashboard. Or you could have any admin views you want to create a dashboard. So a dashboard, you know, like when you log into Facebook, you have menus over here and you have your feed. You know, dashboards used to be your My page on websites. This is, when I'm logging in, what am I going to see? What am I supposed to do? Do I get a content screen? Do I get, here's what's new, here are the latest comments, here's what Jenny posted, here's what Tom posted. You know, it could be anything. I don't have a favorite. It depends on the situation. The only thing I would recommend is pick one and stick with it. Get rid of the rest of them, because it can get confusing to a user 2 weeks later, log in, and I don't know what Tom did because I'm looking at this other dashboard over here. So now that we've done a lot of the Drupal core stuff, CK Editor is the WYSIWYG that is kind of won the war of CK editors, and it's going to be in Drupal 8 core. You can customize that too. And I like just to take everything away and only give it back little by little. On the settings screen, there are filters you can add. It doesn't seem like a lot, but by putting security filters on, you can really reduce risk on your website. You don't know what users are going to find on the internet and copy and paste into their website and realize that the script on the internet that I found doesn't do what I thought it was going to do, and it's an XSS vulnerability, or it's some kind of crazy JavaScript hack or something dangerous. You should remove the ability to put in tags that are in your templates. So I'm defining the H1 on the page in the page template or in the field group node display. I don't want the content creator to make an H1. I can give them a style that looks like the H1, but I don't want them to use the H1 because that's bad for SEO. So sometimes H1 and H2 I'll remove. but you have the ability to just take it away from them. There's a setting that is configure allowed content. This is kind of a gotcha. When CK Editor loads originally, they strip out class equals whatever. If you just have this configure allowed content button checked, it will not do that. And then the other thing I was going to recommend is, as of CK Editor 4.3, widgets were introduced. And at MidCamp this year, I went to a great presentation by Brandon Neal, who is actually presenting this same presentation upstairs right now, about making your own buttons for CK Editor. It's really cool, kind of complex, some developer-y stuff in there. But since this is pretty new, a lot of people are developing widgets for us. So right now you could go to CK Editor and download Bootstrap layout buttons. So I could just add this widget in, and I get another button in my CK Editor that says, give me 2 columns next to each other. It's really cool. There's been a battle for the body field. That's the term in the last 12 months of, do we make the body field allow everything in there? Or do we break it up into multiple fields? Working in CK Editor, you are allowing content creators to put anything they want inside the body field. So it's kind of bad for the overall segmentation of the content, but better for the administrators. So I think it depends on the site that you're doing as to which approach you take. Uploading images in the WYSIWYG. So I had mentioned it in the Fields UI that we can separate where we're uploading the images to. When you upload images in the WYSIWYG, click the button, Drupal doesn't know that they're images. You are just uploading from the WYSIWYG to the server. There's a few different controls you can have and how you're going to do this. So you can restrict what kind of files can be uploaded. Don't let them upload EXEs and PowerPoint presentations. Like Drupal's images, you can have thumbnails created to select where are they uploaded. CK Editor has a premium plugin called CK Finder. I think it's $100 per year. You can set different upload folders and then use it based on content type. So CK Finder lets you make a profile type and a text format for that. You make a text file format for that, and you can upload the images like you would in Drupal. IMCE only lets you upload per user role or PHP items. So you can do like user, like I talked about, or the year, month scenario, like WordPress. If security is not involved, the only thing you really need this for is to separate this out into not one folder with 20 million things in there. If you are not comfortable with allowing your content creators to put everything in the world inside the WYSIWYG, you want some more control over the content, look at the paragraphs module. So instead of one body field, the paragraph module lets you define what paragraphs are. And then you can add multiple to where your body field would be. So I want a text paragraph, and you could have 3 paragraphs in there, whatever you want. But basically, I want a words section. And then I want an image reference field, and I could put a media or an image field in there that has a setting of pull right or pull left. I want to put a video in, and I could put a video field. And then I could put 2 more text paragraphs. Paragraphs module lets you break that content into bite-sized areas rather than one body field. This is great if you need to put advertising into your content area. So you can, say 2 paragraphs, image to the right, add to the left. It's been in development for about 3 years. It's gained a lot of popularity lately. It requires more development time. You have to think not only of what's the scope of the site and what's the scope of the content types. Now you have to look in detail of each content type and define what possibly could be in the paragraph, in the body field, and then make paragraphs for them also. So kind of extra credit there. Okay, so we've gone over who we are, what it is. Administrative workflows is kind of how we do it. Drupal doesn't ship with a scheduler. I can't schedule content. I want this blog post to go out at 8 a.m. and I have to wake up and do that. So there's a scheduler module that you can add on, which allows you to schedule content. You can set it on which content type can be scheduled. I only want blog posts to be scheduled or articles. Who has control of it? The only problem is that, we cache Drupal. We make Drupal go to sleep and only change if pages change. So you have to set up an external cron, and cron's a server gobbledygook that comes in and says, hey Drupal, do you have to do anything? And Drupal says, oh yes, I have to publish this blog post, and then it publishes the blog post. So you set up a server cron, every 15 minutes. On the 2-minute marker, make sure that your scheduling post, fits into that window. Because if you set the blog post at 8 a.m. and nobody visited that site until 8:13, that blog post might not run until 8:30 when the cron hits it. So talk to a developer, or if you have like a cPanel or control panel in your server settings, you can usually set up a cron run. Workbench is a great suite of tools from Palantir in Chicago, the same one that made that spreadsheet, that allows you to have different moderation states. Drupal ships with published or unpublished. Workbench adds draft and needs review, which are pretty handy, and every time I've used Workbench, I haven't needed more than that. So I can come in and I'm working on my article, and I've been working on it for 3 weeks. It's going to be great. It's about panels. And it's been in draft mode for that long. Once I am ready for my editor to look at it, I switch it to needs review. And then they can get emailed or they can see it on their administration dashboard, but not until that time. And with the other moderation states, I can change it from draft to needs review. Only an editor could change it from needs review to published, or needs review back to draft, saying, oh, you need to work on that more. In the suite of tools, there's another one called Workbench Access, which can restrict access to different sections of the site based on a simple menu or taxonomy. So I could add a tag to a page that says, bookshop, and only the bookshop group can access that. I shouldn't say group. Only the bookshop workers can access that. Or if it's in this part of a menu, only these people can access this section of the menu, only this people can access that section of the menu. It's good if you only have one content type, pages, but different people need access. And then Workbench Media adds the integration of this extra steps to either branch of the media module. So what media is, if you upload, the media suite of tools is pretty complicated, but if you upload an image or a video or a document, that can have moderation also. All right, last big section here, documentation. How does this website work? I don't know. We've talked about the inline documentation. We can write all that out in our spreadsheet. Our developer doesn't need to think about it. They can post it, copy and paste it into the content types, fields, blocks, views, panels. They all have places where you can enter description or instructional text for the administrators to go, half the time they're not going to see it, they're not going to read it, but the time that they get stuck or the time that they get their new employee, that information's already in there. The fields allow HTML in them. You could link to another resource that you keep if you have an intranet website or docs stored someplace else. There's a module for developers called Advanced Help. If you are making a custom module that inserts itself into the Drupal UI, into the admin UI, you can have another HTML page that links up. Hey, it's like a structure for help. So if I'm doing a custom map of the US, and how does this map work, my developer can do that also. I like to make docs, external docs, and keep them in Google Docs or a Dropbox or a company intranet. I keep a master copy. So I use Google Docs. I have my Google Docs spreadsheet that only I or maybe somebody else has access to. And then I export PDFs for them to use. We send them to the client. Client can share them with the appropriate rolled user. So I make author documents, which authors can access only. Editors can access author and editor's docs. Webmasters can access all of them, and so on. And they can be as simple as stepping through their job. So how do I add an article? Go to the create an article, enter the title, enter the name, include some screenshots, step by step. What happens when you're done? Here's each type of fields. Oops. Create galleries. So this is an author doc, and then I would send to the editor. Editors have permissions for all author tasks plus what's here. So they can add an issue, and there's going to be some how to moderate, some screenshots with big red arrows. That's what I'm talking about right here. Other people would make videos and include them in here. You can do whatever you have the ability to create and what's best for the client and what's best for their budget. All right, finally, testing and tweaking. And this is a great thing to do while you're making the documents. I've been to a few sessions this weekend, and they are don't use the admin user, the user one of a website that has special permissions. Always switch up who you're using as you're testing this. So create yourself a webmaster, an editor, an author role. Create yourself a role. Adjust permissions as you develop these things. Go in early and often and check it out. So how do you create yourself a role? If you're a Gmail user, you can do the plus trick. So Jim plus webmaster is a unique account to Google, same account to Gmail. So I can create myself as many accounts as I need to. There's also a module called Masquerade, which you can masquerade as another user. This is good with default accounts, especially good with a client who has a specific account, you can actually see what they see. And that is all. I hope you've enjoyed it and have learned some things. Anybody have any questions?
You had mentioned that you turn off the shortcut box.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular reason why you do that, or rather than creating shortcuts for like roles?
Just because I try to first look at the admin toolbar and minimize that to as much as possible. If that's not the case, then yeah, there's definitely been sites where we've added shortcuts to the shortcut toolbar. But you can also strip away so much from the admin toolbar that it's there also. Sure.
What about strategies or kind of things to be done to build custom dashboards?
Views and blocks, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Workbench has some great ones right out of the box. It started with administration of a content generator. We were pulling in RSS feeds of news stories for a sidebar,
Right.
and present that immediately to it. So using the blocks system on the admin theme, just adding blocks in. That's the simplest. Besides the Workbench, so the Workbench comes with them already. You can add on more or take some of them away, or just the block system. And then I think some of my developers prefer contexts also.
Yeah.
The context to stick it on there. All right, thank you all for coming.